Assalamu alaikum. I'm your instructor of your course Global Business Management. Today is our first lecture. This lecture comprised of 3 parts. The first part is the my profile. The second part will discuss about course outline, and in the third part we will talk about the introduction of the course. We start with the first part with the profile of the instructor, which is me. My name is Dr. Abu Bakr Saeed, and academically I have the PhD degree from Middlesex University, UK in 2013. Before getting this PhD degree, I have MPhil degree from Brunel University, London in international business. And before joining to Brunel, I did MBA, major in finance, from Blekinge Tekniska Högskola, Sweden. And before doing my MBA, I have a background of computer sciences, where I did majors in software engineering from Umeå University, Sweden. And before doing this, before traveling abroad, I have done the BCS Computer Sciences from Islamic International University, Islamabad. This was my basic educational background. If we talk about the teaching experience, I have taught in 3 different institutes. Currently, I am affiliated with ComSats Islamabad in the Department of Management Sciences, and I am here since June 2014. Before joining ComSats, I served in Foundation University, Islamabad from April 2013 to May 2014. And during my PhD, and before even joining my PhD program in Brunel, from September 2008 to February 2013, I was affiliated in London Churchill College in London. Basically, I was there as a visiting and permanent faculty member. During my PhD program, I was serving as a visiting faculty member, but before the PhD program, I was teaching there as a permanent faculty member. Besides this, my teaching experience, I have around about 6 months research experience in University of Aalen, Germany, which is located in Stuttgart. I served with Professor Ingo Scheuermann as a research assistant. The line of my research was, during that period, was international business and SMEs. Currently, and before, I am teaching the courses like research methodology, corporate social responsibility, business policy, international business, business environment, and corporate governance. These courses I am teaching, and before I taught at various levels. Currently I am teaching at MBA level and MPhil level, and before I have taught at undergraduate level as well. Currently I have 3 PhD students and several MPhil students, and the line of research of those students are international business, corporate governance, and financing policies. These are the major lines, and especially my focus is emerging economies. This was the brief introduction of me, and now let's talk about the subject. We start with the course outline. Global Business Management. This is the course outline of your course. First of all, there are course details. The course code is MGT380. The term is spring 2015. The level is undergrad. The credit hours are 3 credits. And again, instructor's contact information. My email address is provided here. and it's in fact my first name dot second name @ comsats.edu.pk. The short course description, what this course is about. It is like this course introduces the concepts of managing international business to undergrad students. Specifically, this course examines how firms align their strategies to succeed in international business. It includes key economic, political, cultural and regulatory factors which are different from the home country. Business is becoming increasingly global, and firm requires managers who understand and can resolve the challenges faced in surviving and succeeding in this competitive, diverse and dynamic environment. The subject seeks to integrate a range of management disciplines, including economic, global finance, marketing, operating management, and social, cultural, and political sciences into a program focused on the application of such discipline to real challenges. Managers capable of operating effectively in this environment will have truly global skills and will enhance their career prospects in today's exciting international business context. Okay, let's talk about the learning outcome. There are 3 learning outcomes of this course. Broadly, we can talk about the first one: create awareness among students about complexity and dynamic nature of international business. This was the first learning outcome. The second learning outcome is build their capacity to think and respond strategically. The third learning objective is make students aware about the factors which impact on international business activities in different political, legal and cultural environments. Teaching method would be the video recorded lectures. That's the main method we are going to use in this course. Assignment, the assessment criteria. There are 2 sessionals, 2 midterms, which is called sessional. The first sessional would be after week 10. The second midterm would be after week 20, I guess. And besides this thing, the first sessional will carry 10 marks. The second one will carry 15 marks. The third one, which is the combination of quizzes, assignments, projects, and course assignments, projects, which will carry 25 marks. The final examination will carry 50 marks. Okay, the main textbook that we are going to use in this course is Francis Charulnium. This is the name of the author. The title of the book is International Business, Context and Cases. This is the 3rd edition, and 3rd edition, Eastern Economy edition, and the publisher is Princeton's Hall. The second textbook that we are going to use in this course is Chirinzu Kota's. This book is known with the name of first author, which is Chirinzi Michael or Chirinzi Kotas, and Ramkanian and Moffat. These are the 3 authors of this book. The title of this book is International Business. This is the edition of 2013. Other material that we can use are there are web sources, recommended journals, and resources that web resources that we can use are New York Times, which have the special section for international business. And the second one is IB Times, International Business. And the IB Times, this website also have specially focus on the IB, international business activities around the globe. The third one is Economic Times. Economic Times, similarly as the above 2 sources, this Economic Times also have a specific section for the international business activities. I strongly recommend you guys to consult these websites very frequent intervals to know what's going on around you in the globe. The recommended journal, which will give you the insight about what's going on academically about global business. The first journal is Global International Business Journal of International Business Studies, which is also termed as JIBS, International Business Review. The third one is Management International Review. The fourth one is British Journal of Management. These four journals are very renowned, well-standard journals around the world. Next, the course requirements and expectation. The grades will be assigned on CIT, ComStats grading scales. Be prepared. The important thing that I would say is that I really emphasize you guys is to well prepared for the lecture. Before sitting on the two things are really important before sitting and attending the lecture. Is the first one, you have to prepare. You have to prepare that lecture. First thing is you have to see and you have to learn the first lecture. The previous lecture, you should understand the previous lecture because these lectures are interconnected with each other. And the second point is, before listening the new lecture, you should aware what we are going to talk about. The best thing is you should read the chapter slide highlights of the chapter. There are on the right corner of the pages of the book, there are certain highlights of each topic. You should at least read those highlights before having the lecture. The quizzes and assignments, there will be 4 quizzes in this course, and assignments similarly that you have to complete. You must turn in the assignment on the day they are due. Late submissions will not be allowed, and these assignment and quizzes will be delivered to you in due time. Okay, let's talk about the module outline and the session plan. In total, we have 32 lectures. The first lecture would be as we are doing today, that's the introduction of the course. Second lecture is about the business environment, and specifically we are going to talk about the impact of culture on global business. The third lecture is also related to the same topic, and we are going to discuss about how culture influences the global business. The fourth topic is international economic environment, how different economic systems impact on global business. The fifth one is international trade and investment policies. Investment policies and trade regulations that we have around the globe, how these regulations and trade policies impact on the global business. Fifth and sixth lecture will be on the same topic. The seventh and eighth lecture will talk about the politics and law, how the politics within a country and laws within the country affect on the business, domestic business and the international business, especially when the new or foreign firms going into the new market, how politics and law of that country affect on the business of the new entrants. Ninth and 10th lecture will be the theory of global trade and investment. In this topic, we will talk about the foremost global trade theories, and what are those theories and how they have academic theorists have formulated those theories. And 11th and 12th lecture will be the global business environment. In the first one, the 11th one, we will focus on the financial markets around the globe, and we will specifically we are going to focus on the US market, EU market, and the markets in emerging economies. Emerging economies, we mean Brazil, Russia, India, China. And after that, in the 12th lecture, we will talk about the exchange rate, how exchange rate across the countries affect on global business. The 13th and 14th lecture is economic integration, how business across the globe is integrated with each other. Market transition would be the topic of lecture 15th and 16th. Market transition, we mean the East European market that are transitioning from the command economy to a free economy. 17th and 18th, entry in foreign market, global business research, that would be the topic of lecture 17th and 18th. Importantly, we will talk about how firms enter into a new market. We will discuss about the entry modes and extent of internationalization by the business across the globe. Global business entry and expansion, that will be the topic of lecture 19 and 20. Strategic planning, the importance of strategic planning, that will be the topic of lecture 21 and 22. 23rd and 24th lecture, we will talk about the global strategy and operation. Especially, we will focus on international marketing. Similarly, we will continue talking about the global business strategy and operations, and we will talk about international services in lecture 25 and 26. Lecture 27, we will talk about global logistics and supply chain management, and we will continue talking about the same topic on lecture 28. Lecture 29, multinational human resource management, how firms manage the human resources, human capital across the globe when they enter into the new markets. Lecture 30, multinational financial management, and lecture 31, that would be the future of global business. Shortly we will discuss about the future of global business, and then we will start revising the previous lectures, and lecture 32 will be purely based on revision. That was the main course module outline or session plan. Deliverables, the author guidelines that you have to submit the assignments, that the references, the styles that you have to follow would be like this. Referencing style that you are going to follow in assignment would be the Howard referencing style. Length would be the maximum length that you can write in assignment would be the 2000 words. Font would be the 12 Times New Roman, and except heading, you can use the higher font in the headings. Font type, report type that you are going to submit, it will be the submit in hard copy, or you can submit in the electronic form. The last one is the academic dishonesty. What's the meaning of academic dishonesty? If we say about academic dishonesty, simply in a short term, in a layman term, we talk about this as the copy-paste material. In assignments, we do not accept the copy-paste material. This academic dishonesty in this term is called plagiarism. Academic specifically, academic dishonesty is an offense that will not be tolerated in any form. It have absolutely no tolerance for cheating or plagiarism of any kind, and there are no acceptable excuses for that thing. Anyone caught cheating, plagiarizing in this course will be assigned outright 0 marks and will be penalized according to the university regulations. Plagiarism, what's the meaning of plagiarism? Plagiarism is copying anything, text, ideas or pictures from another source without citing or acknowledging that source. If you use another person's text, ideas or pictures or organization ideas or concepts, you must cite it. Even if you have rewrite the ideas or concept in your own words, you have to acknowledge, in a way you have to cite the reference of that work in your assignment. This was the course outline. Now we will go back to the course. This is the lecture 1. We start with what is the learning objective of this lecture. There are 4 learning objectives of this lecture 1. The first lecture is understand what is meant by the globalization. The second learning objective of this lecture is how global business is different from domestic business. The third learning outcome of this lecture is be familiar with the main drivers or causes of globalization. The fourth and last objective of this lecture is understand the various stages of globalization. Okay, Let's start with the first one, the first slide with the basic definition. What is meant by globalization or internationalization of a firm? In simple terms, if we talk just informally, we say that any transaction which is carried out outside the borders of the domestic market will be considered as international activity or international business. Formally, we can see that any business activity that is carried out across the national borders is termed as global business activity. Important point in this global business activity is extent of global business activity can vary across the activities. How can we explain this line, this statement? Consider an example. A firm is have a local production unit in a domestic market. That firm do not find a minor part of that product. What that firm is going to do might be that firm is going to import that part from the foreign market to complete the product. This is also a foreign activity. And on the another hand, if we see a firm go outside the border and install a new production unit in that market, they start from the scratch to end. They install a new production unit, they hire people, they install each and everything from scratch to final product. All the production processes will be done in the foreign market. That's the entire foreign operations. That shows the level of difference with level of business activity. In the first example, we see a small business activity. On the other hand, we see a huge business activity. The extent of internationalization varies across firms. The second important thing is, when they do the extent of internationalization varies, of course the level of commitment varies across firms, level of resources that firms are using for that international activity also varies. The level of risk the firm is taking is also varies. Like in the first example, where firm is only importing a small part, level of risk is very minute, level of investment is very small, level of commitment is very small, level of investment in terms of money is very small. On the other hand, if the firm who is investing the complete project in making the entire product outside the market, that's a huge risk involved in that market. The second thing is huge investment involved as compared to the first firm, a huge capital investment, huge risk involved as compared to the first firm. These things shows that the extent of internationalization also affects on other matters. The second point is why we studied global business management. This is the main, of course you guys are thinking about this thing, why we are studying this subject with this topic. Consider an example. When a firm moves to a new market across the border, of course it has to interact with the new market. With the new market with the new customers, different market segmentations, different market competitors, new regulators, and so on. So in a way, I would say that firm need to know the demographics of that market, the language of that market, the geography of that market, economics of those market. Why that firm needs to know these different facets? Because demographics, for instance, demographics shows that what is the proportion of male and female. Might be the product of that company caters only the one gender. This demographic also shows that the age differences of the people, the buyer, the customers of that company. Might be the product of that company is catering only a certain segment of the market according to the age. The language, of course, to understand that market need and customers' demand, that firm need to know the language. Geography, Geography shows where that firm, that market, that country lies. What is the distance of that firm, distance of that market from the domestic market. Of course, it will also affect the cost of production, of transportation cost. Economics of the new market. What is the economic situation of that market, of that country? It will affect the buying power. For instance, it will affect the buying power of the customers. Okay, global business managers like you guys are going to be in the future. Global business managers should know these elements. Global business management this subject in fact enables managers to understand economics, anthropology, statistics, geography, and demographics of the countries. So we can say that this subject will enable you to understand the economics, anthropology, statistics, geography, and the demographics of a lot of countries. Now the question is, why a firm need to go abroad? Can a firm stay isolated? That's the obvious question that can arise in your mind. We can say that if a firm is, consider an example, if a firm is staying just in domestic market, doesn't intend to go outside the market, can that firm stay in the domestic market? Of course, that firm stay in the domestic market, but there will be some problems in the future. Might be that firm can sustain its market share in the present time, but it's not sure about what's going to happen in the future. Why? Because of the global power of globalization. Power of globalization means multinational firms are entering in the market in all over the globe. If that firm is willing to stay just in the domestic market, but there are who will be the competitor of that firm? The multinational firms will be the competitor, that will be the ultimately competitor of that firm. And of course that multinational firm is going to offer, might be the cheaper rates, a range of choice of products, better quality products, better services. These will be the attributes that a customer will prefer to go to that firm rather than that only the domestic firm. In that way, that firm can lose its market share. We can say that formally we can state that a company fails to go abroad is in the danger of losing its domestic business to competitors with lower cost or better quality. Here we see that how has foreign direct investment changed over time. If we see this graph, this graph shows the FDI activity across the countries. As it shows United States, and it shows across the countries and across the time horizon. As we see United States, United Kingdom, Japan, Germany, France, Netherlands, and developing economies. As we see in the first three columns for the United States, the extent of FDI is decreased over the period of time, as it shows that in 1980 it was round about 38 billion US dollars. It goes downward in 1990 and it reaches round about 24 billion, and gradually it decreased to round about 18 billion in 2007. And same goes for the United Kingdom, but of course the extent of decline is not the same as the US. The next one is Japan. Japan, we can see a huge rise during the 1990s, a huge rise in FDI of Japan, and then it's Germany, which stays almost the same during this period from 1980 to 2007. France, which observes a gradual increase from 1980 to 2007. And Netherlands, it's a small decrease. And developing economies, the special, significant and substantial change that we observe is in developing economies. In developing economies, as we can see that from 1980 to 90, there is a small abrupt increase, and then 90 to 2007 we see a huge increase from in the FDI of developing countries. The main contribution goes to the India and China. Again, in the next this graph, you can see FDI this is the comparison of FDI across developing and developed countries during the time horizon. The time horizon scale is from 1988 to 2008, as it shows that smaller scale of FDI activities, overall smaller scale activities from 1988 to 1998. But as we see that gradual increase in the share of developing countries and the rise we see in 2000, a huge rise, and this proportion is really going upward for both countries, developing and developed countries, in 2000. And if we see a huge shift between the proportion, the ratio of contribution of developing countries from 2004 and onward. As we can see, in 2004 it's almost equal contribution of FDI from developing and developed economies, and this proportion goes onward in 2005. And if we see in 2006, 7, 8, though in 6 and 7 contribution of developed countries is larger, but of course we can see increase in increase in FDI from the developing countries. Okay, now we will talk about what are so different with the global business. What are those factors which make the global business different from the domestic business? There are several factors. There are in fact the 6 factors which make global business different from the domestic business. The first one is the political and legal differences. Political and legal differences is a firm when is operating in the local market, in the domestic market, of course that firm is going to face the local political and legal environment. But on the other hand, if firm intends to go out, firm has to face a different political and legal environment. That legal and political environment would be a really difficult task if that country is really big, like USA or India or China. These political and legal differences as compared to the local domestic market would be really different, because the other China, US and India, they are big countries and they have a complex political and legal environment. And this facet can be more complex if that country has several political and legal environments within the same country. Like in US, they have different states, and within each state they have different legal system. And similarly, if we see in India, in each state they have different political system. And when a firm have to enter in those markets, in such markets, they have to battle with those complex political and legal differences within new market. The second point is cultural differences. Of course, when a firm enter into the new market, it has to face a new culture, which can be the big deciding factor for that firm. The next point is economic differences. There can be a huge economic difference compared to the local market. When a firm has to enter in the new market, firm has to face a new economic situations, new economic environment, like buying power, is it a low income country or high income country? These are the factors that firm has to consider. Difference in currency. Of course, the currency rate will affect on the transactions of that business. Trade restrictions. If the firm is entering in such market where that market have severe trade restrictions, then that firm is going to face real problems. Like for instance, if a firm is entering in Russia or China or North Korea, or there are huge restriction in Gulf countries as well. Higher cost of distance. There is a higher cost of distance if a firm is entering into a firm which is entering into a market which is far away from the domestic market. This higher cost of distance mean, of course, it will affect on the cost of production through the cost of transportation, which will be the part of the logistics management. Now the question is, why a firm become global? There are two important factors, or I would say there are two important forces which push firms to become global. The first factor is called push factors. These are the driving forces which are considered as push factors. These are the factors which pushes firms to go outside of the domestic market. These are considered as reactive reasons to go out from the domestic market. Examples, for instance, saturation of the domestic market, unavailability of the financial needs. Firm cannot meet its financial needs. Firm cannot access to capital for undertake the investments. Unavailability of the utility resources. For instance, in the case of Pakistan, there are a lot of firms are moving out just because of power shortage. The next category of the factors are considered as pull factors. These factors are proactive factors. In fact, these factors are such forces which pulls firms to go out from the domestic market into a foreign market. What can be the example of the pull factors? Profitability, that's the main important factor. Growth opportunities that firm is going to go after in the foreign market. Okay, now let's talk about let's continue about these driving forces. The first driving force is the profit advantage. There is a huge profit advantage in going out. That's the big motivator of the firm to move from the domestic market to international market. Global business is more profitable. That's the well-known fact that global business is more profitable than domestic market. The second important thing is not necessarily global business is if global business is not profitable to greater extent, firms can use global activity or international activity to support the business activity in the domestic market. How they do that? Firms can use the foreign market, the production in foreign market, to reduce the overall cost in the domestic market. For instance, these global operations will enable a domestic firm to enhance the profitability in the domestic market as well. It will reduces the overall cost both in domestic and foreign market of the firm's production. How it can be possible? Like if a firm is producing a small quantity of product in the domestic market and it incurs a huge cost of production, what that firm can do, it start exporting that product in the foreign market, and due to the concept of economy of scale, the overall cost of production will be reduced, so profit margin will be increased. The next point is most important. This is the profit advantage is the most important way to increase the profit is by reducing the cost. As we have discussed the example that increasing the product product quantity, the overall cost of the product will be reduced. This is the one way. Second way is firms can go out in the foreign market to cut the cost by acquiring the cheap labor, cheap resources. And we have seen around us that a lot of multinational companies, especially from the US and the Europe, they went abroad to China and East Asian countries, especially Thailand and India and Bangladesh, Pakistan. They went in these markets to avail the low-cost labor. Because of low-cost labor and the cheap resources, they can reduce the overall production cost of their product. The next, the famous example is Philips. Right now have the 23 factories in China, and their 2/3 of their 15 billion of goods produced in China. This is a huge number, and only in 2001, 20% of their total production of Philips came from China. From this figure, we can estimate the level of production these multinational firms have in the developing countries, especially in China. The second point is growth opportunities. Firms go to the different markets to avail the growth opportunities. Sometimes it happens. Most importantly, we have seen this phenomena from the developed countries, that when their markets saturated, they started to search the new markets. New markets, most importantly, they have searched and they have entered into the developing countries, markets in the developing countries. The very famous example is when the automobile industries in Japan and in US, when they have seen that every household have a car in their markets, almost every household have a car in their domestic market. What they saw, what they did, they expanded their operations to the developing countries, which are considered as emerging economies nowadays. They moved to those markets because of their huge population and huge market potential and growth opportunities. And important thing is, this goes in both ways. I mean, developed market, the firms from the developed countries, they move to the developing countries for the growth opportunities. And on the other hand, we have seen a recent trend, a recent surge from firms from the emerging economies. They move to developed countries, especially EU and US, in search of growth opportunities. The third point is domestic market constraints. Firms can move out from domestic market to foreign market because of domestic market constraints. What can be those constraints? When market potential of any product is fully tapped, that's the important thing. Like we said before, that the automobile industry, when they observe that every household have the car, or home appliance companies, they have observed this thing, every household have their products, then they have fully tapped the market potential from the local market. Well, what they did, they move out into the foreign markets. The second thing is, when domestic market constraints mean when there is no sufficient resources in the domestic market, they move out. This aspect is more pertinent for the developing countries, when they don't have sufficient financial resources or human capital or other basic necessity to conduct the business. They move to the European countries or better technology, in search of the better technology. Optimal scale of production. Optimal scale of production, like we have seen that Nestle earns 2%, only 2% from their home country Switzerland, and similarly Philips earns only 8% from their home country Holland. One another point is, domestic recession can provoke internationalization. Domestic recession means the people don't have the sufficient buying power. And we have seen the example of Hindustan Machine Tools Limited expanded globally in 2001 because of this factor. And they have seen this thing that people within the India, they don't have the sufficient buying power of their product. What they did, they moved outside the country, especially to US, and they expanded their businesses in the foreign market. The fourth point is competition in the domestic market. This is very important point. When a competition in the domestic market increases, firms have no choice but to move to the foreign market. The first important element in the competition point is a protected market is not a driver for globalization. What is meant by protected market? Protected market is such a market which is protected from the entrance of foreign market or from the domestic players by the government. A firm which is protected by the government from the multinational firms or domestic firms is called as protected market. In protected market, when a firm is protected from the competition, of course that firm don't have any motive or any reason to go out from that domestic market. We have seen this example, this protected markets things in pre-liberalization era in China and India. In India, the liberalization or privatization process started in 2001, where we have seen that before the 2001, in 1991, before the 1991 era, and in this liberalization process started in China in 1994, before the pre-liberalization period. The market in both countries, in India and China, were protected from the foreign entrants. In that markets, the firms do not have any motive to go out. That's why we don't have seen a lot of foreign firms, a multinational firm from India and China in that pre-liberalization era. The next point is counter competition strategy. It is a strategy in which a company penetrates the home market of the foreign entrant so that it loses the competitive strength and protect the domestic market. What is meant by this counter competition strategy? When a firm sees that there will be in the near future there will be a huge competition and there will be no choice to survive other than to move outside the country. What that firm can do, they can do a proactive reaction, and they rather than they wait for the foreign entrant to enter in their market, what they do, they go out into the market of that entrant and try to weaken the position of that competitor in their foreign country. How they make them weaker? When they enter into the foreign market, they try to capture the market share, and in that way they try to establish their reputation in that market, and they try to destabilize that foreign entrant, so that foreign entrant will lose its this resources, capital, and might be that foreign entrant will not be able to enter in the market of that domestic firm. We have seen the very famous examples like IBM entered, which is US firm. When this foresee a danger from the Japanese computer firms, what they did, IBM, rather than waiting for the Japanese firm to enter in the US firm, what the IBM did, IBM entered into the Japanese market and captured the market share of computer industry. What happened because of this? The Fujitsu and Hitachi, they loses the cash flow. and because of that decrease in the cash flow, they lost their capability to enter in the USA. Similar example we see in Texas Instrument company, which entered in Japan with the similar reasons. GE entered in Germany and Japan. GE entered in GE foresee that a company AEG, called AEG from the Germany, and the Hitachi from the Japan will enter in their industry. What they did, they, rather than waiting them to come in the USA, they entered in Germany and Japan through licensing, and they established their market there, and they captured the market share, and they destabilize and they diminish the capability of AEG and Hitachi so that they wouldn't come in the American market. Next point is government policies. Government policies is also a huge factor which influence the foreign activities. These government policies can affect positively or negatively. Sometimes policy limit the scope of the business. For instance, Birla, we can see that in early 2000, Birla is an Indian firm. It's a conglomerate business group which was restrained by the government policies to expand their business in India. What they did, they started expanding their business in the foreign Asian markets, and because of that governmental policies which affected negatively on Birla, they had to move out. These government one important thing to remember is these government policies can have positive impact and negative impact. The example of Birla was the negative impact, and the positive impact might be government can facilitate the local domestic firms to move out through subsidies, providing them the subsidies, tax exemptions, or some other financing availabilities, special loans, to motivate those firms, domestic firms, to go out and explore the opportunities in the foreign market. Okay, our next topic is international orientation. There are 4 types of orientation that we can see. There are 4 types of orientation towards internationalization. The first one is ethnocentrism, which is home market orientation. The second one is polycentrism, which is host countries orientation. The third one is regionocentrism, which is more focused on regional orientation. Geocentrism, which one is the fourth one, is more centered on world orientation. This is also terms of EPRG framework. As we can see, these are the first capital word of ethnocentrism: E, P from polycentrism, R from regionocentrism, and G from geocentrism. And these 4 orientation also decides or also determine the stages of globalization as well. Now we see what these orientation meant in international activity. The first one is the first column is the feature. The second column is the first orientation, ethnocentrism. The second one is polycentrism. The third one is regionocentrism, and the fourth one is geocentrism. As we can see that in the first one, perception of what is the perception of the market in an ethnocentrism. In ethnocentrism is manager or firm believes that domestic market is superior than foreign market. Important thing is all these 4 stages, concentration, your orientation shows that firm is already entered in the foreign market. However, their concentration or their focus is different. In the first one is their thing, despite they are operating in the domestic, in the foreign market, but even then they think activities what they are doing in the domestic market is more superior, and it will be taken as just the extension of domestic markets operation. However, in the polycentrism, important thing is they are more focused on host country, and their perception of the market is each market has different attributes and must be focused differently. And the third one is the orientation. In the regionocentrism, the orientation is the region, and their market perception is market can differentiate on the basis of the region. They consider market on the basis of regions. And the last one, their focus is overall globe, and they consider all the markets across the globe as a single market. Now we talk about the marketing strategy. In the marketing strategy, extension of what is the extension of the in ethnocentrism? Extension of the domestic strategy. The marketing strategy in ethnocentrism is they are just extending the activities and operations of the domestic market into the foreign market. This next one is the polycentrism. In polycentrism, they are localized. Their production is localized. They are treating domestic and foreign market as a separate units. And the third one is regionocentrism. Their marketing strategy is their trade-off between localization and standardization. The fourth one is in the geocentrism, they're more focused on, their marketing strategy is more focused on standardization across the globe. Here we are going to discuss a mini case study of Procter & Gamble in Japan. What we are going to do, this is the case study provided in the book, and what we are going to see that we are going to in fact apply the concept what we have learned today in the lecture 1 on this small case study, and you guys are going to answer provided in the end of the case study in the next slide, and you are going to think about these questions and you are going to try to answer the question in the next lecture. Okay, these are the brief description of the case study. Procter & Gamble entered in the Japanese market. This is basically a US firm which entered in the Japanese market in 1972, and this important thing is this was the first one to introduce disposable diapers in Japan, and because of their uniqueness in their product, they captured the 80% of the market share in this industry. The next point is because of stagnation in their market orientation and their overall strategy, they lost the market share from 80% to 8% during the over the period of 10 years. They shifted their focus on laundry detergents and personal care products, but they couldn't succeed even in those products, and lost about $40 million US dollars in each year. Their market, what was their marketing strategy? Here is an exhibit of their marketing strategy. In TV advertisement, this is a TV advertisement they showed in their home market, which was USA, and they also used the same TV advertisement in European market. What was that advertisement that they used? TV advertisement which showed a woman relaxing in a bath of soap bubbles while her husband walked in and asked her about the soap. The same advertisement produced the significant results, as I said, in Europe and US, but this advertisement was failed in Japan. The questions that you have to think about are as follows. Why a successful advertisement which was successful in Europe and USA is in one market failed in another market? And the second question that you are going to think about, What was the central problem with the management's approach? Now the hint is, you see the differences in internationalization, international orientation. The last topic that we have discussed, the international orientation. This is the main hint of that topic. And we are going to discuss this case study or answer of these two questions in the next lecture. Now we are going to do a quick recap. What we have done today, we have started with the concept of globalization, and we have learned what's meant by globalization. If we say what is globalization, we can see that globalization is any activity of any business which moves outside the borders of the domestic market, or any transaction which is carried out outside the borders of the domestic market is considered as international activity or global activity or business, international business. What are the differentiating features of the global business? This was the second main topic that we have discussed, and we have seen that the main important differentiating features of global business was political and legal factor, economic factor. Political and legal factor, that we have seen that when a firm enter into the new market, they have to face a different political and legal environments, and this the extent of or complexity of political and legal issues varies, and we can say depends on the size of the new country, or we can say like China or USA or India. These are the huge countries, and within those countries they have very huge difference between their political system and legal system within the states. And the next point was economic situation. Economic situation, firm has to face a different economic situation. Currency, firm has to face a new currency, and that will be the major environment change that firm has to face. And the high cost of transportation that firm has to bear because of geographic one can say that geographic location of the new market, that's the one factor also determines the global business. And now the next topic that we had discussed was what was the forces of global business. As we have distinguished between the pull factors and the push factors. Pull factors are such factors which attract firms to move out from domestic market to foreign market. What can be these pull factors? Profitability, growth opportunities, and on the other hand there are push factors. What are those push factors? Push factors are those factors which pushes firms to move out from the domestic market to international market. What can be those push factors? Like the constraints within the domestic market. These constraints can be different: legal constraints, regulatory constraints, financial constraints. Firms are not getting sufficient finance to undertake their investments. These can be the unavailability of the technology. Firm need new technology, and that technology is not available in the domestic market. And these constraints can be in the form of other basic needs which firm required to conduct the business, like we can see that the electricity or other resources, or rule of law. We can say rule of law is very important thing, and that's also pertinent to developing countries, especially nowadays in Pakistan. We have law and order situation is very poor in our country, and because of this thing companies are moving out. Another factor is corporate governance, poor corporate governance, and firms have to move out from the domestic market to foreign market because of poor corporate governance within that market. Okay, after that we had discussed about 4 stages of internationalization. We had these orientation that we had discussed are like this. The first one is home market orientation, host market orientation, regional orientation, and geocentric orientation. These were the 4 orientation that we have seen and we have discussed. In the first one, the firm is purely focused on the domestic market, and despite they are doing the business in the foreign market, but their market orientation is purely domestic oriented, and their strategy is as the extension of the production or strategy in the extension of their strategy from domestic market to foreign market. That's their strategy in the first one. In the host market, in the host orientation firms, which was the second point. In that point, firm is more focused on the host market. In that way, we can say that firm acknowledge the differences between the domestic market and the foreign market, and especially we can say that firm acknowledges the characteristics which differ foreign market to domestic market. And their strategy is localization. Localization means they adopt to a new market and they follow those strategies, and they make strategies according to the new environment that they face in the foreign market. The third one was the regional centric firms. Regional centric orientation is firm is taken their strategy and their focus would be on the overall region. They take or they consider a market on the basis of regions. They divide regions on the basis of they divide the markets on the basis of regions, and their strategy also divides on the basis of region. Their strategy mean for each region they have different strategies, and importantly they have to trade off between the localization and standardization. The last one was the geocentric orientation. Geocentric orientation mean firms, those firms are considering overall world, the globe, as a one market, and their focus is standardization. They are treating the whole market, the whole world as a single market, and they are trying to establish a standardized product, standardized strategy in each and every their market, their processes. They're trying to standardize their things. These were the 4 strategies that we had discussed, and in the next lecture we will talk about the subsequent part of these 4 orientations. That would be what are the pros of each strategy and what are the consequences of adopting each strategy. And then we will talk about the global business. What are the stages, how business enter into the new market, and when a firm decide to enter in the new market, what are the different decisions a firm has to make in order to enter in the foreign market. These are the 2 things that we are going to discuss in the new lecture.